At the grandest table in the city, billionaire Daniel Cruz raised his glass, not to toast his wife, but to humiliate her. Some women, he said with a smirk, were just never meant to be mothers. The guests laughed politely, until his wife, Elena, slid a small white envelope across the table. What happened next left the entire room in stunned silence. Welcome to our channel, where stories of love, betrayal, and second chances come alive. If you believe karma never misses, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and tell us where you're watching from. The chandelier above the Crystal Ember restaurant gleamed like a crown of fire. Every table was dressed in golden glass, and at the center, where the city's elite gathered, sat Daniel Cruz, billionaire real estate mogul, and his wife, Elena. To anyone watching, they looked like perfection. Daniel in his tailored navy suit, flashing that effortless smile that made headlines. Elena, graceful in a satin gown, quiet but radiant, the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. But beneath the surface, something fragile trembled. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel said, standing with his champagne flute raised. The crowd hushed. "Tonight, we celebrate more than another successful year for Cruz Holdings. We celebrate legacy, family, and the future." He turned slightly toward Elena, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Though some futures," he added, "take longer to build than others." The room chuckled softly. Elena's lips tightened into a polite smile. She felt the sting, subtle, but familiar. Daniel wasn't done. "You all know how much I've wanted to expand our family," he said with a theatrical sigh. "But some dreams just don't happen, no matter how much money you throw at them. Isn't that right, sweetheart?" Laughter scattered across the table. Elena's heart sank. She stared at the flickering candle in front of her, wishing it could melt her away. Her hands shook under the table, clutching her napkin. She whispered, "Please, Daniel, not tonight." But Daniel only smirked. "Relax, darling. It's a joke. Everyone here knows we've tried." One of the investors, an older man with diamond cufflinks, leaned in. "Daniel, you'll get there. These things take time." Daniel shrugged dramatically. "Maybe. Or maybe I should have married someone more fertile." The laughter came again, louder this time. A few guests exchanged awkward glances. Elena's chest tightened. Each word felt like a dagger. She could almost hear her own heartbeat pounding over the soft piano music. She excused herself quietly, rising from her seat. But Daniel's voice followed her. "Oh, don't go getting emotional now, honey. You know how she gets," he said, turning to the table with a grin. "Sensitive topic." The guests shifted uncomfortably. The pianist hesitated mid-note. Elena froze, humiliated, then forced a weak smile. "You're right," she said softly. "I just need some air." She walked toward the hallway, her heels echoing faintly against the marble. Once she was out of sight, she steadied herself by the wall, fighting back tears. In the reflection of a glass panel, she saw a woman she barely recognized, pale, exhausted, and holding on to a love that had long since turned cruel. For years, she had endured the whispers, the looks, the silent blame for something she never caused. She had begged Daniel to take the tests, and when he finally did, he hid the truth. But she found it. The confidential fertility report, signed by his doctor 6 months ago, was tucked inside a white envelope, now resting in her clutch bag. She had kept it quietly, unsure if she would ever use it. But tonight, as he mocked her before strangers, something inside her broke and hardened. She wiped her eyes, reapplied her lipstick, and whispered to herself, "No more silence." When she returned to the table, Daniel was already laughing with his assistant, Lara, a young woman with red lipstick and too much confidence. Elena sat back down gracefully. Her face was calm now, almost serene. She reached into her bag, pulled out the envelope, and slid it across the table toward her husband. "What's this?" Daniel asked, eyebrow raised. "Something you should have shared with everyone tonight," she said softly. "Go on, open it." The table fell quiet. Forks paused mid-air. The pianist's music faded into background hum. Daniel looked at her, confused but curious. "Elena, this isn't the time." "It's the perfect time," she interrupted, her voice steady. After all, this dinner is about family. Her words hung in the air like smoke. Daniel hesitated, eyeing the envelope, the small, silent thing that would soon burn down his carefully built lies. Daniel stared at the envelope as if it might bite him. The laughter that once filled the room had dissolved into an uneasy silence. Crystal glasses glimmered untouched under the golden light. "Come on, Elena," he said finally, forcing a chuckle. "You're being dramatic." Her expression didn't change. "You like honesty, don't you, Daniel? You said tonight was about family and truth. So open it." The tension was thick enough to slice. Lara, his assistant, shifted uncomfortably beside him. The investors exchanged glances, unsure whether to intervene or keep watching. Daniel gave an exaggerated sigh, snatched the envelope, and tore it open. Inside were 3 folded papers, white, crisp, official. He scanned the top line. Then his smirk vanished. Elena sat perfectly still, her hands folded on her lap. She watched the color drain from his face, the arrogance melt into panic. "What is this?" he muttered under his breath. "Read it," Elena said calmly. He cleared his throat and read aloud, voice trembling slightly. Patient: Daniel Alexander Cruz. Date: April 19th. Result: azoospermia, complete absence of sperm cells detected. A stunned murmur rippled through the table. Forks clinked against plates. The pianist stopped playing altogether. Daniel's fingers trembled. "You went through my personal files." "No," she said, her voice steady as ice. "You left them on your office desk the day you said I was broken. The day you told me I wasn't woman enough for you." "Elena, stop," he hissed, glancing at the guests. "This is private." "Private," she repeated, raising her voice for the first time. "You made my womb your public shame. You humiliated me in front of people who barely know me, called me Barren, and all this time," she pointed at the report, "it was you." The room went still. Lara's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. "Elena," one of the older investors whispered, "is this true?" She looked directly at him. "It's signed by his doctor. You can read it yourself." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You don't understand. It's not permanent. It's a condition that can be." "Don't," she interrupted softly, tears shimmering but unshed. "Don't lie again." The silence was suffocating. Even the waiters froze mid-step, afraid to move. Lara stood up suddenly, her eyes darting between Daniel and the report. So all those treatments you made her do, the hospital visits, the pills, it was all to hide your own shame." Daniel glared at her. "Sit down, Lara." "But she didn't." Her voice cracked. "You told me she couldn't give you children. You made me believe." She stopped mid-sentence, realizing too late that she'd said too much. The guests gasped. Elena turned her gaze toward her. "You knew." Lara stammered. He said he was lonely." "I didn't mean." Elena held up a hand. "You don't need to explain. He already did." Daniel slammed the table, his voice low and angry. "Enough. Everyone stop acting like I'm the villain here." The oldest investor rose from his chair. "Daniel, you humiliated your wife. And you lied to all of us. That's not just bad manners, that's character." The rest of the table murmured in agreement. Someone whispered, "I thought they were the perfect couple." Daniel looked around, realizing the empire he'd built on charm and image was collapsing in front of him. He turned to Elena. "You planned this." She met his glare with quiet dignity. "No, Daniel. You planned this when you chose lies over love." He stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. "This dinner's over." But before he could storm away, Elena stood too, calm, composed, radiant even through the heartbreak. "No," she said. "For me, it's just beginning." With that, she picked up her clutch, walked past the stunned guests, and out of the restaurant. Cameras flashed near the entrance. The paparazzi Daniel had invited himself, hoping to show off his perfect marriage. This time, they caught something else entirely. Elena Cruz walking away with her head held high, while the billionaire she once loved sat surrounded by silence, shame, and the evidence of his own deceit. Rain drummed softly against the glass windows of the Cruz mansion. The grand estate that once felt like a palace now echoed like a tomb. It had been 3 months before that dinner, the night everything began to unravel. Elena sat alone in the upstairs study, surrounded by scattered medical bills, fertility reports, and unanswered prayers. She had spent years believing something was wrong with her, injecting hormones, tracking cycles, enduring whispers from Daniel's family. His mother had been the worst. "Maybe God didn't choose you for motherhood, Elena," she'd said once with a smile too polite to be kind. Elena never fought back. She wanted peace more than pride. But that night, something inside her told her to look deeper. Daniel had left for a business trip, though she knew it meant a weekend with his assistant, Lara, in Palm Springs. He'd forgotten his tablet on the desk, still logged into his email. For a long minute, she just stared at the screen. She hated the idea of spying. But when you live in a house full of lies, silence becomes its own form of betrayal. She opened his inbox. And there it was, an email from Dr. Howard Stein, subject line, fertility report, confidential. Her pulse quickened. She opened the attachment and began to read. Diagnosis: azoospermia. No viable sperm cells. Cause: irreversible. Her eyes blurred. She read it again, and again, until the words sank in. Daniel wasn't just the reason they couldn't conceive. He'd known for months. Every cruel joke. Every time he'd said, "Maybe you just weren't meant to be a mother." Every tear she'd cried in that cold fertility clinic while he scrolled on his phone. It had all been a cover, his shame disguised as a failure. Elena pressed her hands to her mouth, trembling. She felt anger, sadness, disbelief, all at once. Then she saw another email. From Lara. "Daniel, I'm scared someone will find out about the doctor's visit. I can't keep lying for you forever." Elena closed her eyes. Her whole world tilted. So Lara knew. The assistant she'd once trusted, the woman Daniel claimed was just helping with scheduling. She stared out the window, tears streaming down her face, the reflection of the rain blurring with her own. For the first time in her life, she felt something stronger than heartbreak, resolve. That same night, she called her best friend Maya, a quiet and loyal woman she'd known since college. Maya had watched her endure years of quiet humiliation but never judged. When Elena told her everything, Maya's voice shook with rage. "He blamed you. For his infertility. He made me believe it was my fault," Elena whispered. "I begged him to get tested. He said it was unnecessary." "Elena," Maya said softly, "promise me you won't let this destroy you. Let it free you." Those words echoed for weeks. Elena didn't confront Daniel immediately. She waited, watching, learning, collecting strength. He kept up appearances, laughing with reporters, showing off his success, taking her to events as his trophy wife. But every time he smiled for the cameras, she remembered that file. Every time he introduced her as "my Barren wife," she reminded herself the truth was on her side. Then came the night of the dinner, the night he pushed too far. The night she stopped being silent. Now, sitting by herself in her car outside the Crystal Ember restaurant, her hands still trembling from the confrontation, she took out the fertility report once more. For the first time, she didn't cry when she looked at it. She smiled, not out of vengeance, but release. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Maya. "Did you do it?" Elena typed back, "Yes. It's over." There was a pause. Then Maya replied, "No, my friend. It's just beginning." Elena leaned back in her seat, watching the rain trace soft lines down the windshield. The city lights shimmered through them like stars bending through tears. The woman who had walked into that dinner broken was not the one sitting here now. She was free, and for the first time, the truth didn't hurt. It healed. By morning, the story had broken everywhere. Billionaire humiliates wife, but her envelope at dinner exposed his lie. The headline stretched across every major blog and gossip site, plastered beside Daniel's once charming smile. Paparazzi swarmed the gates of the Cruz mansion. Cameras flashed like lightning every time a car approached. Daniel's security team couldn't keep them back. Inside, Daniel stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. "Listen to me, Ron," he barked, pacing the marble floor. "We need to get ahead of this. Release a statement. Say it's all a misunderstanding. That report was old, wrong, fake, whatever." His publicist's voice crackled through the speaker. "Daniel, stop. The clinic confirmed it. The report is real. They've already spoken to the press." Daniel froze. "What do you mean they spoke?" "They verified the results. Words out, Daniel. There's nothing to spin." He hung up and hurled the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall, the sound echoing through the empty house. He looked around. Everything he'd built now felt hollow. The awards, the framed magazine covers, the paintings that once symbolized triumph. Now they mocked him. From the staircase, a voice said quietly, "They're outside again." It was Lara. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She looked smaller somehow, stripped of her usual confidence. Daniel glared. "This is your fault too. You should have destroyed that file when I told you." She flinched. "I told you this would happen, Daniel. I told you not to keep lying." "You don't lecture me," he snapped. "You think I paid you to think." She swallowed hard. "You didn't pay me to lie either. But I did. 4 years. And I can't anymore." He turned sharply. "What are you saying?" "I gave an interview this morning," she whispered. "I told them everything. The fake fertility treatments, the way you humiliated her, the affair. I told them the truth." Daniel's face drained of color. "You what?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I thought I was protecting you. But now, I realize I was just protecting a monster." He stepped toward her, fists tightening. "You ruined me." She stepped back, trembling. "No, Daniel. You ruined yourself." She turned and walked out, the sound of the door closing echoing like a verdict. Daniel stood alone in the silence, breathing hard. His phone rang again, this time his chief financial officer. He hesitated, then answered. "Daniel, we are in trouble. Investors are pulling out. The board wants an emergency meeting." "Tell them I'll fix this," he said quickly. "I'll issue a statement." "You don't get it. They saw the videos from the dinner. The shareholders are furious. You embarrassed the company. This isn't about your marriage anymore. It's about reputation." The call ended. Daniel dropped into a leather chair, head in his hands. 4 years, he'd controlled every narrative. The perfect husband, the ruthless businessman, the untouchable success story. But now, with one envelope, the mask had cracked, and the world saw the man behind it, prideful, cruel, and small. By evening, TV stations ran clips of Elena walking out of the restaurant, her calm grace compared to his humiliation. She had become an overnight symbol of dignity and courage. Comments flooded the internet. She deserves better. Imagine the pain she carried all these years. Karma's right on time. Daniel shut off the TV, unable to stand the sight of her. He stormed into his study, yanked open the liquor cabinet, and poured a glass of whiskey. His reflection stared back at him from the mirror, tired, hollow-eyed, stripped of power. For the first time, he felt something he had never allowed himself to feel, shame. His empire was falling. Lara had left. The board wanted him out. The world knew his secret. But what hurt most wasn't the headlines or the humiliation. It was realizing that the woman he'd broken was the only person who'd ever truly loved him. He sank into the chair and whispered into the empty room. "What have I done?" The silence answered him, cold, unmerciful, and final.